Hello and welcome back to the Kick-Off, your My Betting Mate football podcast discussing all things A-League and English Premier League. We're back for another big week of football previews and discussion, and I'm joined by none other than Nick Dabano once again. Welcome back, Nick.
No, thank you for having me again, Matt. We're heading towards the final stretch now. We've restarted the football again after the international break. Can't wait to dive into some of the big talking points.
Yeah. So we'll get stuck into the A-League first and foremost, start nice and close to home. And we have a big Melbourne Derby coming up this weekend with a lot on the line for one of the teams in particular, with Melbourne City having suffered a bit of a disastrous week for them since we last caught up and spoke. Failed to get the 3 points in Newcastle, had to settle for a 0-0 draw, and obviously lost last night. We're recording on Wednesday today. They lost to Central Coast Mariners to a last-minute winner at home. So it's really created a lot of, I guess, pressure on this upcoming derby for City.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were talking about last week that it felt like City was starting to find their form after that big win against the Wanderers before the break. You know, they're at home against the Jets in a game that they're highly fancy to win. The Jets playing for next to nothing bar pride. And City just couldn't break him down. Ryan Scott put in a masterful performance, was great between the sticks, keeping City at bay. And then yesterday, similar story against the Mariners. They had plenty of chances early in the game. Marin Jakalic missed a plethora of great opportunities to put City ahead. They did take the lead through Tolgai Arslan, but as soon as they took the lead, they were level again. A silly penalty conceded from Vicente Fernandez, and then, you know, Torres equalises them right at the end. You know, you could take a point from that game and at least you stay 3 points behind Western Sydney Wanderers, given this is that game in hand. And you could see the late goal to Max Ballard, who was a great goal. Great dribbling, close in tight, did really well. But to not get a challenge in and clear the ball, I think that's an absolute coach's nightmare. I think, you know, assistant coach Ralph Napoli, who stepped in, would be having fits looking at that because that is a coach killer right there. And so the fact the Wanderers beat MacArthur and the fact that City have now failed to get any points or for 1 point from out of their last six, it makes this game must-win territory. They do play the Wanderers again down this stretch, but it's out of your control now. Like you're playing the field, you have to win, and then you have to rely on help coming from somewhere else. Yeah,
I think the Ballard goal in particular, you know, as a neutral watching it, it's beautiful to see someone taking on all those players.
Yeah.
But if that's your team, if you're the coach of that team and, you know, there's no one even getting a foot in, he sort of just waved through witch's hat defending really, and great goal. That's, you know, we were saying off camera, it's a real football manager moment. You can see that last minute winner and you look, it's their first goal of the season, or in this case his first goal in the competition altogether. So really frustrating areas for Melbourne City, and creates a whole heap of drama, I guess, where they probably feel like they really didn't need to be. Not to take anything, there's no, I guess, shame in losing to a very good Central Coast Mariners side, but I think given the fact, you know, the number of chances they had and spurned, as you sort of touched on, it adds to the pressure, and there's almost a sense of disappointment heading into this game. And I don't know how that affects, you know, a team heading into a derby where everything's on the line. But it's been an interesting sort of mood in that camp, I think.
Yeah, and I think the health excuse isn't there anymore, because I know they only just got Marco Tilio back and Matthew Leckie's had his health struggles, and so has Jamie McLaren. But they're getting all their players back at the right time. They have enough quality, even without those players. The players that they can bring in from their academy, the depth that they've got, it is a squad that is, quite frankly, should be competing in finals and should be competing for silverware like they have for the best part of a decade. This team has, it's just too good not to make finals. And the fact that they're in this position right now, I think, sort of sums up their season. It's going to be an interesting off-season for Melbourne City, regardless of if they play finals or not, because you've got Jay McLaren coming out of contract, Matthew Leckie coming out of contract, Tilio's loan deal ends, same with Marin Jakalic, same with Leo Natal. There are a lot of players they're going to have to make some decisions over, and players who are probably thinking, okay, am I going to stay here? Am I going to look elsewhere? And, I mean, it's also the coach. You know, Aurelio Vidmar's only signed until the end of the season. You know, is Aurelio going to get an extension? Are they going to look elsewhere to bring a new coach in? I mean, the thing that's been looming over is that their former head coach, Patrick Isnorbo, is a free agent right now. Is that going to be a bit of a storyline? So if they can start to alleviate some of that added pressure and everything else if they can start to get some wins, because the more that they don't and these games become null and void and they're dead rubbers, those questions are going to start to be asked. But yeah, it's got to start with a win against Melbourne Victory. If they don't win this week, regardless of even if the Wanderers drop points or a Macarthur or a Sydney FC, it's just not going to help their cause whatsoever, because they need to be in it with a chance. And if they can get a win against Victory, I mean, it's you beating your rivals, you might galvanise the squad a bit. But yeah, to only get 1 point from a possible 6 in those sort of games, not even if they'd lost yesterday but beaten Newcastle, on the
it's
weekend,
a different story.
Yeah, they're what? They'd be 2 points outside the top 6, and you're in a position still to strike. So, I think that overall will be a very disappointing feeling for Melbourne City, having just dropped some points where I feel like they could have easily gotten more than the one that they got. Yeah.
Obviously, these Melbourne derbies haven't thrilled so far this
Not
year.
at all. Not at all.
We'll probably do a proper look at that game later on in the pod. But yeah, not giving us much to write home about. 2-0 nils. City have probably edged the games in terms of possession, but they've just been really dull affairs. Not much. Heap of goalmouth action.
Yeah, well, the first derby, it seemed like City had won it with basically the last kick of the game.
Yeah.
Or kick of the game when Jamie McLaren put the ball in the back of the net and he was offside. Well, I think there was a foul.
It was a foul. It was a very harsh decision.
Yeah, and so that cost City 3 points. Yeah. The second meeting, both teams had chances. City hit the bar a couple of times. But really, they weren't great games. We've been accustomed to some great Melbourne derbies in history, and these two games have unfortunately delivered lemons to all of us and the fans that have gone. I've been to both games as a punter, and I've sat there and kind of been like, oh, here we go again. I've been fooled. I should have just learned from the first time. But this time there's added stakes, because now it's that stage of the year, even for Victory. They got a much-needed win against Perth Glory on the weekend. Fornaroli's finding some form again. They're still trying to keep the hopes alive. I think top 2 is probably a bit hard, but they're looking to try and get themselves in a position where they can. I think now the interesting subplot is you want to finish third, because you not only get that home elimination final, but if you get through, you're the highest-ranked team. You don't have to go to Wellington potentially. So if Wellington finish first, you avoid having to travel across the Tasman. If you're only going to Gosford, in all due respect, it's the Mariners in this sense, but it's a much shorter away trip than having to do an overseas trip and then coming back. If you're only traveling to New South Wales, I think just from a taxing standpoint, it'd be a lot easier for them. Yeah,
taxing support, more likelihood of greater support
fans travelling,
and helping you out too. So certainly an interesting one to watch, and we'll run through the derby again when we run through all the games. The other, I guess, big storyline this weekend will be Wellington Phoenix taking on Central Coast Mariners. Phoenix with a really golden opportunity to put daylight between them and the Mariners, with only a few games left to play. If they beat the Mariners, they'll be 6 points clear at the top. Is this the biggest game in Phoenix history to this point?
Well, think about it like this. It really could have been, and I think that all Wellington fans that stayed up and watched the games, would have been quite a later kickoff for those in Wellington. They would have been absolutely kicking themselves how the result played out. Probably if it was just underneath Melbourne City fans, Wellington fans were de facto City fans for the night. Because if City had won, they would have been 6 points clear going into this, where they could have won and gone 9 points clear and basically racked it up.
Yeah.
If they do win it, and to answer your question, it probably is one of their biggest regular season games in history. It's going to be a great atmosphere in Gosford. I hope that the Mariners fans really come out for this one, and because if they're going to have any chance of winning the Premier's Plate, this is the game that they're going to have to win. We've got that funny wrinkle about games won instead of goal difference, so that plays into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this game is going to be so fascinating. They played out a 0-0 draw earlier this year in Wellington. These two teams have played some quite spicy games in history. Last year in particular, they played a lot of hotly contested, spicy games. Yes, some of the personnel has changed, but there's still that same feeling, because these two teams know that the pressure's on. Wellington know that they've just got to get that 3 points, and they win, then essentially they're home. But the Mariners win, and it's going to set up a great finish to the season, where we have both those two teams just jostling to try and get that first piece of silverware.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting game. We'll look at all the games this round now. So it kicks off with Western Sydney Wanderers taking on Brisbane Roar. And Wanderers are a team that, I think the last couple of podcasts we've recorded, they've been in the firing line perhaps for the wrong reasons. It's felt like the wheels were starting to come off. I think, they're probably fortunate that they did build that bit of a buffer between themselves and City. It's given them the breathing space to sort of recover, and they were really good against Macarthur.
To their credit, they've turned things around brilliantly the last two games ever since the the thrashing at the hands of Melbourne City, where we all just thought this is it. The wheels have fallen off. This is going to be a tough end to the season. But they've galvanised in the last 2 weeks in 2 tough road fixtures against Perth and then going to Macarthur, which is a crosstown rival. But the Macarthur have been in such good form this season, and the way that they've bounced back, and some of those goals were great. Nick Milanovic's goal from a tight angle, just burying that into the back of the net, and then Jorrit Hendricks' beautiful team goal to wrap it up. They come into this game with plenty of momentum. They're in a really good position now to put, before City even kick a ball on Saturday, go 7 points clear.
Yeah.
So then basically they're in. I think they win that game. They win this weekend, they're basically in. Brisbane, conversely, they had a lot of chances against Wellington. They were kicking themselves because, they were taking on a Wellington team with a lot of players. Something Giancarlo Italiano was talking about, that they had a lot of players that were on international duty who came back. They had 1 day to prepare and they got the win, a gritty 1-0 win. Brisbane, they win this game. They effectively stay alive because they cut the deficit. But either way, it's all but gone now for them. They're not going to be playing finals this year, barring a miracle. And I think at CommBank, I think the Wanderers will win this game and take 1 step closer to back-to-back finals appearances, and maybe, just maybe, shooting up the table and getting a home elimination final as well.
Yep. Tip for that one?
Yeah, Wanderers.
Yep, Wanderers for me there as well. Western United taking on Macarthur FC. Western, probably the opposite of Western Sydney. Western United's a team we've sort of seen some good signs from the last couple of weeks, but wheels sort of fell off again in Adelaide last weekend.
Yeah, and an exciting occasion for the club. First ever A-League men's game out in Tarneet.
Yep.
Playing at the Ironbark Fields, I think is the name they've coined it. But so it's going to be an interesting game out the Field of Dreams. I mean, Western, disappointing loss against Adelaide coming out of the international break with that defeat. They're taking on a Macarthur team who need to bounce back. That was a loss they really did not need to have at this point, and now they've put added pressure on themselves. They're 5 points clear inside the top 6, but you lose this game, it starts to go from, okay, we're battling for seeding now, to we're battling just to get there, and that's the last thing they need. It's a tough game to pick because they've played some really good games over the last little bit. They played Macarthur 1-1-0 at Campbelltown earlier this year, which Macarthur were quite fortunate. Western United absolutely battered their goals, but Macarthur just did well enough and they got a late goal. They played out a 3-3 draw in Unite round, which was one of the best games of the season. Daniel Pena basically versus Ulysses Davila. And you know what? I think those who do head out west, I think are going to be dealt a treat. I think this is game. It's for Western. It's all pressure's off. It's a celebration for them.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for them as a fan base to get together and enjoy this moment, to be playing now out in their heartland that they've spoken about for years, and they finally get this opportunity. So I'm going to go a score draw in this game. I'm going to go a 1 step back from a 3-3. I'm going to go a 2-2 in this one.
I don't know. I just feel like Macarthur are going to be the party poopers here.
You reckon?
I just feel like it's still quite a small ground. It still might not be the biggest crowd. I know it's a big occasion, but is it going to have the atmosphere that the occasion potentially deserves?
That's true.
It's hard at a ground like that. And I mean, I'm not knocking the facility. I think it's great that we've got another club that's, developed something that they can call home and play from that ground. But it's still quite a small space. We don't know how many people are actually going to rock up to this one. So whilst it's a momentous occasion, I just don't know if the atmosphere is going to be there to back it up. And it would just be very Western if Macarthur were to come and ruin the party.
Well, the women's team lost their first game out there against Newcastle a couple of weeks ago. They need something to celebrate, Western. Look, we've seen it so many times where it feels like when teams go into new grounds or whatever, that teams actually do the opposite and they lose.
The youth team won an NPL though, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they smacked George Cross. But that was on the back pitch. So keep that one in the back of your mind. Different pitches. But I don't think there's any correlation between it. But I think like Macarthur lost their first game at Campbelltown Stadium. Melbourne Heart lost at Amy Park their first game all those years ago. So
Melbourne Heart lost a lot of games.
They did. So look, I think it's going to be a draw. I think it'll be a good game. I think that if you do head out, I think it'll be at least you're going to get a good game.
Might be worth the trek. Worth the trek. All right, Central Coast Mariners, Wellington Phoenix. We've sort of already touched on this one, so we'll go straight to a tip here. But it's a tough one to nail, isn't it?
Mariners off the short turnaround is going to make it tough. I think this is going to be just like the last fixture, but there'll be goals. I think we'll go 1-1 draw in this fixture.
Yeah, I'm gonna tip Phoenix for the win here.
Interesting,
I think they can get it done. Victory taking on Melbourne City, another game we've already spoken a little bit about. I'm just hoping they've kept all the action for the final derby of the year, or might not be if there's finals and stuff, but at least the final regular season derby.
Yeah.
But I don't know, City just don't seem like a team you can bank on at the moment.
No.
Not
What side of the bed they're going to wake up on this week?
Yeah, that's right. So I might let you go first on this one.
Oh, this is tough. I mean, I'm going to go a draw. I know it's boring. I know it's very boring. This will be the third draw in a row that I've picked. But I just can't get a read on either team because Victory have just been so hit and miss this year. When you think they're going to win, they just draw, like it's the fixtures in the past have just been draws, and City are desperate for points, Victory desperate for points. What I just hope to see is this game opens up and that both teams are prepared to just go for it, especially City because they need to win. But yeah, I think this will end up in a score draw this time between Victory and City. Neither side's going to win this one. Yeah,
I'll agree with you on this one. We'll go a draw here. Just hard to see which side's probably the more deserving of the backing at the moment. So we'll go a draw.
Yep.
Newcastle Jets taking on Sydney FC. We spoke a fair bit about Sydney FC last week, and they obviously went and backed that up with a very good win against Central Coast Mariners, a team that I think has timed their run perfectly, in some great form. I don't see any reason to tip against them playing Newcastle Jets.
Completely agree. The Jets have been in some really bad form for the last few months now. It's a tough time for the Jets. You'd hope that at home the fans come out and really get behind the club. It's a period where, it's not time to shy away, but it's time to actually show that this is a club that needs to survive. It's a famous club. It's an area which has a rich football heritage. But I still think that regardless of all that, Sydney, as you said, they're finding form at the right time. They're playing some really good football. They've worked out the Mariners. Their press is brilliant. I mean, credit to not only just Ufuk Talay, but his assistant David Zrilic, who has helped him out with, he's brought in been a bit of the RB Leipzig sort of press and, stuff that he brought in from his times overseas. But I think Sydney are just going to be too strong. Newcastle will be gallant, but Sydney will win this game.
Yep. And then finally, we've got Perth Glory taking on Adelaide United. Adelaide had a really good win last week, and Nestor Irandakunda's really started to show, the sort of form that led Bayern Munich to take such an interest in him. Hat-trick, his first senior men's hat-trick last weekend. Can they get it done in Perth?
I think they will. Perth playing, as we're recording, they're playing tonight against Sydney FC in a catch-up game. It's a really short turnaround, and I think we spoke about last week. I think it's gotten to a point in the season where the wheels have fallen off a bit for Perth, looking ahead to the off-season now, where it's going to be an exciting off-season for them so they can actually start planning. But Adelaide will win again. They're not giving up on their hopes of maybe making a bit of a late run, so I think they're going to take this game very seriously, that the fact they've won 2 in a row, and going to tip something, Nestor Irankunda's going to score again. I think he's going to end his time here in the A-League with a bang.
Yeah. Adelaide win for me there as well. We'll cast our eyes towards the Premier League. So last week we obviously had a look at the top 3 in their run home, and we saw, that once again these top 3 sides are just so close. There's nothing between them. Arsenal and Manchester City playing out a 0-0 draw, sort of cancelling each other out. So for this week's column, we sort of had a look at, if the 3 teams at the top are struggling to beat one another, which of the teams that they all have to face might, hold the keys to where this Premier League title ends up. So there's 3 teams that they all have to play. Those are Tottenham, Aston Villa and Wolves, and they're 3 teams that have nabbed results against the top 3 this season. Wolves probably one team that stands out from the other 2 in terms of could they potentially help decide where this Premier League title race goes. But I think what really impressed me last time they played City and beat them was just how few chances City created that day. If they can recreate that, I know that was at home, and I'm pretty sure their next 2 games, their games against the top 3, they play Arsenal at home, Manchester City away and Liverpool away. I think of those 3 games, the ones that they could potentially get something from is the Arsenal game at home, which is actually this Saturday. When you look at those 3 teams, is there anyone that you think is going to have a bigger say than anyone else on deciding this title race?
Spurs.
Yeah.
Spurs. I know they've hit a bit of a purple patch at the moment. That draw against West Ham this morning, not ideal. Was able to try get to fourth. It would just be, I think, a feather in the cap of Ange Postecoglou if they get to the Champions League. But not only that, they just stir up the title race a little bit. They just make it a little bit harder. I think you look at that game against Arsenal on the 28th of April, so in only a few more weeks' time. That game in particular is going to be I think that's going to really stir the pot. That is going to be the game that if they beat Arsenal and they deny them their best chance of winning the title in so many years, it'd be almost like winning something for Tottenham because they deny their rivals. Like, we're not going to win something, you're not going to win something either. So I think
the fans for sure. I don't know about Postecoglou, but definitely
for sure.
The fans.
The Liverpool game's massive, but as is that City game, which hasn't been scheduled yet. That game in particular is whenever that game is played, depending on if it's a midweek fixture as we go in towards the last couple of weeks, that is going to be huge because if City get past Real Madrid in the Champions League, that fixture is going to congest for City. It's going to mean more tired bodies. We know they've been the master of rotating and keeping players fresh. They've got the squad to do it. But playing against the Spurs side who are going to be coming in fresh, it's a free hit every time for them. They're playing at home. I think it's going to be Spurs who have a big say in how things play out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, Tottenham are the team, that have 2 of the 3 games at home. So I agree with you. I think if one of these 3 teams is really going to shape the title race, it's most likely to be Tottenham. And I think the uncertainty about when that City game gets played, because if it ends up being in like the last midweek.
Could you imagine going into
there could be everything riding on that game.
Yeah, well, it kind of reminds me of a few years ago. I think it might have been the 2019 title race where City played, I'm pretty sure it was Leicester, and there's that famous Vincent Kompany long-range bomb that he scored. And that game was coined as Liverpool always ahead, we're always ahead, and City just had to win that game to stay ahead. And Leicester are not Tottenham. They weren't Tottenham. This is not the Leicester team even that won the Premier League. But they just had to win that game. And it took that Kompany cracker to score that goal. And, it's going to be tough for them. Yeah. It's going to be tough, coming up against a Tottenham team on the road. If the Spurs fans are out and about for that one, it's going to be really difficult. Doesn't matter, if City have had the wood over Tottenham recently or whatever, which only until recently they just have started to get their noses ahead, especially at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I think that FA Cup win this year was their first win against Spurs at the new venue. So I think if that game's late in the year, around match day 36, 37, 38, imagine just the bit of extra drama, because when it's literally you're on serve and you've got to win and stay ahead, which it might not be for City, it might be to just keep them alive. Yeah. So that creates another wrinkle to that as well. So should we wait and see? Yeah, we'll wait and see. Aston Villa, the other team we looked at, they play Manchester City away, Liverpool at home, and then Arsenal away as well. So I think we're all in agreement. Tottenham's a team that potentially holds the keys to the title race here. Obviously, they all have to go and win all their other games as well, the top 3. But I thought that was an interesting look in for the title race for the weeks to come. We've got a heap of fixtures to preview this week, so we'll try and get through them. We've got a couple of midweek games that will be happening tomorrow morning, so we won't touch on those too much, but we do have a match between Liverpool and Sheffield United. That's obviously first versus dead last. I think we'll get this out before that game, so quick tip there. Liverpool, easy. Yep, Liverpool win for me there too. Chelsea taking on Manchester United, a bit of a throwback to previously, at this time of year, these sort of games would be looked at as maybe deciding a title race. They're not deciding too much at the moment. So. As we speak, it's 6th versus 12th. Yeah. It's crazy. A bit of an insight into where those teams are at the moment. It's at Stamford Bridge. Any thoughts? Draw. Keep it simple. I'm going for United there. I think United can get it done. Crystal Palace versus Manchester City kicks off the weekend. Any reason to bet against City here? The only reason is tight turnaround because they're playing Thursday morning and the early kickoff on Saturday, but I still think City are going to be too strong. Yeah, I think City have enough depth to manage that. Aston Villa take on Brentford. Villa. Yep, Villa for me there as well. Everton taking on Burnley. An interesting game, that one. Oh, yeah. Everton have hit a real tough patch. And This is at home. Burnley are now alive again because of the points deduction to Nottingham Forest. Going to go Everton to win this game, though. I think that at home, the crowd at Goodison Park will get behind them and will them over the line, and that might, I wouldn't say it'd be the death blow for Burnley, but it'll just be a massive hit. But if Burnley win this game, God, it's going to make things interesting going down the stretch.
Yeah, I've tipped Everton as well, but again, that's mainly down to the home factor. There's no reason Burnley won't be looking at this as a real opportunity to save their season. So it should be a really entertaining game. I think both teams will be out for the kill in that one. Fulham take on Newcastle. Two very inconsistent teams. I've gone a draw here.
I'm going to going to agree with you on that draw and that fixture.
Yeah, Luton Town taking on Bournemouth.
Going to go Luton. Luton's going to win this one. They're going to get one step closer to potentially jumping out of the drop zone. So I think that they come away with a win here.
Yeah, I think maybe the lack of urgency on Bournemouth's side of the fence.
Bit of complacency now.
Yeah, maybe, they might see themselves as being sort of home and dry in terms of another season in the Premier League. I did tip a draw in the column, so I'll stick with that. But every chance at Luton Town with the big home crowd behind them, get up and win this one. Wolves take on West Ham, another two teams I sort of struggled to separate. I've gone a draw there.
I agree with you on that draw in that fixture.
Yeah. Brighton at home against Arsenal. It's not a straightforward game for Arsenal. I still think they'll win. I tip them personally, but anything wouldn't surprise me here.
I'm going to go to the Gunners. I think they can take a lot out of that draw against Man City, and I think they will go down south and beat Brighton.
Yeah. Then there's the historically massive game between Manchester United and Liverpool. Obviously, in the context of United's FA Cup win, United will go into this with a lot of belief and a bit like what you spoke about with, Spurs having the chance to stop Arsenal from winning something. That will be a huge motivation at Old Trafford, especially. Is there a chance United get it done in the league?
There's a chance. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be a draw, though. I think that United gets something, and that just brings everyone right back into the race. It helps Arsenal, helps City. But I just think that United will get something from this game. Yeah,
I tipped a draw there too. I think United, they were much better in their FA Cup performance against Liverpool, and I think that was a pretty good indication of both teams at full strength. So I think a draw we might be in for there. Sheffield United take on Chelsea. Not a game with a heap riding on it, but I've tipped Chelsea.
Yeah, Chelsea win this one.
Yeah, and then finally Tottenham take on Nottingham Forest. Forest right back in that relegation scrap with their own points deduction. Obviously still subject to any number of appeals, so I'm sure. But do you think Tottenham get the job done at home?
I think so. I think they bounce back after that draw against West Ham and come away with a win, which just keeps them in the hunt for the top four.
Yeah, beautiful. I've gone a Tottenham win there as well. Well, that'll wrap up the podcast for this week. Make sure you jump onto My Betting Mate and check out the weekly football columns we produce. Nick, thanks for joining me once again.
No, thank you, Matt.
And we'll catch you next week.